Welcome back. In this video, we are going to create our first method, and we're going to use that in order to generate a random number, and this time for real, because so far we just used this fixed number that we just defined. So let's go ahead and go to our game logic, and in our game logic, that's where we're going to create our new method. And you might recall we created this method called public void on button click, which we then made available inside of Unity and used it. And it was only available in Unity because we made it public. So now let's go ahead and create a new method, and I'm going to create it down here. So let me shut this down a little bit or collapse it. And you can see that now I'm just inside of my class. So let me scroll out a little bit and you can see I'm just inside of my class and I don't need this void update. Let's actually get rid of it now. And this is where the class closes. So we need to create the method before that. So you have to create a method outside of other methods, but inside of the class that you want to use the method in. And of course, if the method is public, you can use it outside of this class as well. But for now, we're going to create a method that will only be executable from our game logic class. So we're going to make it private. So we're using this private keyword, which is the access modifier. And then we say it should return something. So this method here should actually return a value of type integer. Not like the method that we used so far, which was this void method, which didn't return anything. And let me scroll in a little again. So now we are actually going to return of type integer. So basically a whole number. And now we need to give it a name. And method names are always starting with a capital letter. And we are going to use, like Unity does, the camel case. So get random number will be the name of the method. Now, to get a random number, we need to say in which range we want this number to be. So what will be the minimum number that we want it to have, and what will be the maximum number that we want it to have. So in this case, I'm going to say that the minimum number will be called min and will be of type integer as well. So here we say int min, and then a comma to separate it from the next parameter. So this here is a parameter. And we're going to give this method multiple parameters. So I'm going to use int max here. So now we have two parameters, and then we need to use the curly brackets in order to say what should happen once this method is going to be called. Now you see that Visual Studio is complaining. That is because not all code paths return a value. So we said that it will return an integer, but our method doesn't return anything. That's why we're getting this error here. And by the way, we're using these int min and int max in order to basically limit which numbers our random generator, so this method here, will return. Okay, so here I'm going to use int random. This is how I'm going to call this variable, random. And it will just hold a random number. And I'm going to get that using the random.range with min and max. Like so. And then it will return our random value, which is our random variable. So now you see the error disappears. So what we did here is we created a method. It will be private, which means it will only be available inside of our class, which is going to return an integer, which means it will return a whole number. It has the name of getRandomNumber, and it has an input of two values. One is going to be a number, which will be called min, and the other one will be called max, and it will also be of type int, which will also be a whole number. You can also see that it says parameter. So these two here are the parameters. So inside of the brackets here, you set the parameters that you want to give your method, and they are the input of the method. And you need to return the output of the method, because we don't use the keyword void here like we did with other methods. We use the keyword int, which means we're going to return an integer. Now you could of course also return a string, or you could return a bool, or you could return a float. All of that would be fine depending on what you want to do with a method. But in our case, we are going to strictly return an integer, because that's what we're going to do in our method body. So the code that goes into the curly brackets is the method body. This whole thing here is a method. And in the method body, that's where you have your logic that should be executed basically the box, so to speak. So you have an input that goes into the box. This is what happens inside of the box. And then this here is actually what will be the output of the box. And here you're defining the type of the output of the box. So basically we have a random generator now. Now this is of course just for demonstration purposes. In a real world example, you would directly use this random.range because basically it does the same thing as our getRandomNumber method. But I believe that this is a good example of showing all of the different parts of a method, including the access modifier, the data type, the name, the parameters, and of course the return type. Okay, so now let's use our getRandomNumber, because what we want to do is we want to get the random number and then we want to basically state whether we guessed the number correctly or not, which we already implemented. So let's use this getRandomNumber method in order to define a random number each time and assign it to our variable called random number. So instead of defining the value as being 10 all the time, we're going to use our method that we just created called getRandomNumber, and we're going to give it a minimum value of 0 and a maximum value of 20, like so. And now of course we could change the game label text to display something like guess a number between 0 and 20. So now our random number generator will create something. So here you can also, by the way, see once you hover over this range here, it says min inclusive, max exclusive. So that means actually we're saying between 0 and 19. So if we wanted to have a number between 0 and 20, we would have to pass 21 because the 20 is actually not included. So in this case, the 21 is not going to be included because if we hover over this range, you can see max exclusive. Exclusive means not part of. So inclusive means part of. So that's going to say the random range, so the number here will be between whatever we enter here and one less than whatever we enter here. So basically, in our case, we are using the min and max values that we are passing to our method, which means the 0 and 21. So you see here, this is where we pass the 0 and this is where we're passing the 21, and we are passing them into this other part of our code. You could now, of course, use the debug log in order to say what min is. Min is, and then plus min, for example. And then debug log max is, and then plus max. Okay, and you can see that this is where we declared the method. This is where we created the method. And now we can use it throughout our code. So we can just use it in here. Then if we wanted to, we could use it in our on button click. So here we could use the same method also, and so forth. Okay, so we are free to use our method all the time. So basically it's a code block that we created and now we can reuse wherever we want inside of our game logic script because we defined it to be private, which means it will only be available inside of this class. We're going to later on see what the advantages of using public over private in some cases are and what the disadvantages are as well. So now at this point, let's save our script using Control S or Command S, depending on what you're using as a system, and test our game. Because now we should actually be able to play the game. So let's run it. And then it will say, guess a number between 0 and 20. Let me enter 15. It says try higher. Okay. Let me enter 17. Still higher. Okay. 18. Still higher. Wow. 19. And it was 19. Okay, so that is it for our game basically. So now we have a game where we can actually guess what number the computer thought of. So let's rerun this game. So run it again. Okay, guess a number between 0 and 20. Let me enter 5 this time. It says try higher. Let me enter 20. What would be the highest number? 15. And it was 15. So each time we run our game, it will now generate a new random number. All right, and that's it for this video. In the next one, I have a little challenge for you where you can try to implement basically saying how many tries we needed in order to guess the number that our game thought of. And yeah, see you in the next video.